Today we're going to create some hyperbolic planes. For example, a Pringle, a chanterelle, and some kale. But how do you do that, you might ask? Here's how. Let's start with something simple, a hyperbolic paraboloid. Start with a simple slip stitch and crochet 6 chains. Attach the last stitch to the first using a slip stitch and then a single crochet. 12 single crochets in the ring, and finish the round with 1 slip stitch and 1 single crochet. I'm now going to start increasing. I'll increase every other stitch with 2 single crochets in 1 stitch and 1 single crochet in the next. And then I'm going to repeat this pattern over and over again. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue this pattern of increasing every other stitch. I'm no mathematician, so I won't go into the nitty-gritty of the math behind the hyperbolic planes. But the basic idea is that the surface will always expand exponentially. This is basically the one thing that you have to keep in mind when crocheting hyperbolic planes. To create an exponential curvature, you need to increase and increase and increase. But you can somewhat control the curvature by using different kinds of stitches. So here I'm going to start with half double crochets to create a curve that is not so steep. I'm still going with the pattern of increasing every other stitch. But since I'm using the half double crochet, I'm also going to build a bit, which will result in not as steep a curve as if I was using the single crochet. As you can see, it's starting to form somewhat of a curve. But I'm going to continue for 2 more rounds so that you can clearly see the hyperbolic curvature that's going to occur. And my hyperbolic paraboloid is finished. Let's do some magic with the invisible edge technique that I've been teaching you. And voila, here it is. This is basically the beginning of every hyperbolic project that you can do. Let's move on to the hyperbolic pseudosphere. In this example, I'm starting with a circle. The increase ratio would be every other stitch, every third stitch, and so on for 3 or 4 rounds. This way you will get a flat surface to begin with. Now start the increasing pattern. Increase every other stitch and make an ordinary single crochet every other stitch. Repeat this pattern over and over again every round. After a couple of rounds, the surface will start to form a curvature, as you can see here. As you can see, the hyperbolic pseudosphere begins the same way as the hyperbolic paraboloid. Now let's do it over and over again. Use this pattern and increase and repeat the pattern over and over again every round. Soon enough your artwork will start to morph into more and more strange shapes, and the artwork will start to live a life of its own. After a couple of more rounds it will look like this. As you can see, the surface has nowhere to go, so it starts to morph and expand in all directions. Let's add another color so that you can easily see how the surface bends and morphs in all directions. If you don't have any ideas for your next crochet project, I recommend this because it's so soothing and relaxing. It's also nice to know that the end result doesn't have to be anything specific. You can just do it for the sake of doing it. Let's cut the yarn, and this is how it looks so far. Lastly, I'm going to show you how to alternate the pseudosphere. I'm starting with a chain as usual, but this time I'm going to crochet a longer chain, and I'm not going to attach the first stitch to the last. And I'm going to try to crochet an oval around the chains. To do this, I'm just going to have to increase at the top and the bottom of the chain. And I'm just doing some regular half double crochets along the chain. Here I'm going to go ahead and increase by crocheting a double crochet, and a couple of more double crochets, and trying to round the corner, so to speak. And here's how it looks so far. Continue by doing some regular double crochets, and increase at the top and bottom of every round by crocheting a couple of double crochets in every previous stitch. The pivot technique is something that I use a lot in freeform crochet. It's a way to detect if you need to increase more stitches. If the stitch pivots towards one or the other side, you need to increase or decrease. If you're left-handed, you need to increase if the stitch pivots towards the left, and vice versa if you're right-handed. Okay, here's how it looks so far. Let's do a couple of more rounds to see how it will turn out before we start increasing. And now it's increasing time. You can do the same pattern as we did with before, or you can alternate with another pattern if you want. For example, you can increase in every previous stitch or every other previous stitch. The amount of increases will determine the curvature of the surface. Now we're starting to see the result of the increase. It might take a couple of rounds before you can see it. As you can see, the increasing is starting to take form. So we're creating some kind of paraboloid here as well. I'm going with the same technique as previously, only this time I'm going with the double crochets. Since double crochet builds much faster, you won't have such a steep curvature. So this is a way to control your artwork. I'm just playing around, so I have no idea what this is going to look like once it's finished. And that's just the magic and charm of freeform crochet, that you can play around and do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be anything specific if you don't want. You can just play around and sketch it out as you go. After a couple of rounds with constant increasing, you can see that the surface is starting to expand. You can now start to create something fun out of this, and in a later video I will show you what you actually can create with this. This is quite a fascinating technique, and I hope that I've inspired you to try this out for yourself. In a later video we're going to examine some practical applications for this technique. So I hope you stay tuned for more and that you try this out for yourself. It's much easier than you would think, and it's a perfect beginner's project. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you